in commemorating the 75th Foundation Day of the PSG College of Technology. You've been part of the nation-building process since 1950. As we participate in this really impressive and well-attended celebration, I'm happy to acknowledge that, of course, it's not just this Platinum Jubilee or semi-sesquicentennial, as we've been told, that we are marking today, but the eve of the centenary of the PSG group of institutions, which, of course, has contributed to the development of the nation since 1926. It's wonderful to be in the presence of dignitaries like Sri Lakshminarayana Swami and Sri Gopala Krishnan, amongst others. And I'd like thus to extend my thanks to the management, to the principal, the staff, and of course the students of the PSG College of Technology for inviting me here as your chief guest on such a special occasion. Let me just delve a little bit at the start about how the young engineers and entrepreneurs standing here today, or sitting here today, I beg your pardon, can draw inspiration from PSG's century-long experiment and see how enterprises can thrive while embracing values of compassion and solidarity, because civic-minded leadership, such as this institution has stood for, can transform cities just as they've transformed the landscape of Coimbatore. To be an engineer is not an individualistic role. It's being an asset to society as a whole, and learning the values of empathy and compassion will only help you progress steadily through life. Your legacy, the PSG legacy, began with industrialist P.S. Govindaswamy Naidu, who believed ignorance was the root of slavery and who sought to spread knowledge that would convert colonial subjects into free citizens one day. In 1926, his four sons created the P.S. Govindaswamy Naidu and Sons Trust, dividing the family estate into 5 shares and dedicating one entirely to charity, adopting charity as their 5th brother. Guided by the motto, "Let there be charity so that others may share my family's prosperity," they established the PSG and Sons Charities to advance education, health, and community welfare. And over the decades since then, the Trust founded a wide network of institutions from the Sarvajana High School. They started building it in 1921. It began serving students in 1924. PSG College of Arts and Science in 1947, this College of Technology in 1951, and of course, I heard that this College of Technology began classes in a small shed before it had its own campus, and eventually 25 to 30, I think, colleges and schools spanning engineering, medicine, management, humanities, advanced studies, and so on. Alongside education, PSG has also expanded into industry and healthcare, creating research centers, hospitals, social service programs, and always ensuring that business profits were reinvested for the public good. I think the PSG model is really inspirational. It's profoundly shaped Coimbatore, turning it into a hub for education, healthcare, and industry. Its campuses have produced generations of skilled professionals, entrepreneurs, and global achievers like the ones on the stage with us today, while its hospitals, rural health centers, and welfare projects have uplifted the underprivileged, especially women and children. Rooted in the principle that sharing is caring, PSG continues to subsidize education for poor but meritorious students, embodying socially responsible entrepreneurship in an era of rising materialism. I must say, this century-long record of devotion proves that prosperity and compassion can coexist. Indeed, one can argue should coexist. I am really pleased that you're using this special occasion to honor so many distinguished alumni. I had read somewhere that years ago, one of your more remarkable alumni was a gentleman called G.D. Naidu, who was known as the Edison of India. Starting with a bicycle repair shop, he came up with numerous innovations, from a petrol engine that ran on kerosene to a razor blade sharpener. Fostering an innovative and entrepreneurial spirit has clearly been a hallmark of the PSG group of institutions, and I don't know what new innovations the students sitting here will one day come up with. Coimbatore, fondly called the Manchester of the South, is known worldwide for its textile industry and is also termed as the pump city for its motor and pump production. But I'd like to hope and argue that the prowess of the city with its engineers and textiles is such that rather than simply being labelled the Manchester of the South, it's time that the young people here step forward and uphold the name and legacy of the city so that tomorrow Manchester is called the Coimbatore of the West instead. Perhaps to build change makers, we need more institutions like the PSG College of Technology more than ever. For globally, humankind is grappling with a series of insurmountable or seemingly insurmountable challenges that require highly gifted, creative and hardworking engineers to deal with, such as those I see in this packed audience. In 2025, as engineers the world over reckon with a succession of great difficulties, they find themselves not simply at the intersection of technology and progress, but at the very heart of humankind's bleakest fears. In my view, it's your ingenuity and resolve that will empower us to surmount these formidable challenges and lay the foundations of a sustainable, secure, and equitable future, which is doubtless the need of the hour. Allow me, therefore, to dwell in some detail on these challenges that we, as a gathering of global citizens in the truest sense of the term, will have to rise to meet. At this point of history, clearly the spectre of climate change looms large over the engineering fraternity, demanding solutions from you that are not only creative but immediate. As Indians, we're all haunted by climate change, whose manifestations can be seen everywhere in our nation, from the devastating landslides in Wayanad, not so far from here, to intense floods in Assam last year, the harrowing cyclone Remal, and not to mention the latest landslides and flash floods in Punjab. Even here in Tamil Nadu, the effects of climate change have been apparent, be it the 2015 Chennai floods, cyclones such as Varda, Oki, Gaja. In fact, owing to Tamil Nadu's vast coastline, as many as 14 districts, including Chennai, Kadalur, and Kanyakumari, are highly vulnerable to cyclones, depressions, storm surges. Climate change and global warming are worsening the situation, especially with more flash floods and landslides being triggered by our merciless monsoons lately. Climate scientists say that the Bay of Bengal is experiencing accelerated sea level rise, a faster rate of warming, and a greater risk of compound events like marine heat waves and tropical cyclones. Changes in monsoon systems, deep cloud systems, are affecting the mixing of ocean layers, which are directly contributing to the increase in seasonal occurrences of dead zones in the Bay of Bengal, which reduce marine life and productivity, directly affecting the coastal and fishing communities. As an MP from a coastal area myself in Kerala, with a large fishing community, I am greatly conscious of this. I've often told even our Prime Minister, if we lost 6 inches of land to China, there would be a national uproar. But I have lost 64 square kilometers of my constituency in the last 16 years just to coastal erosion because of climate change and sea rises and seas attacking our coast in Kerala. This is the kind of challenge that we are all looking at. And this situation, the climate disorder, comes to us at a time when we have no option but to reconcile the demands of unrelenting industrialization and urban expansion with the need to preserve our planet's dwindling resources, a need that cannot be ignored. The quest for renewable energy, often hailed as a panacea for our environmental woes, has reached a critical juncture. While solar energy, wind energy, hydropower all require engineers, they made big strides. Engineers are now battling the conundrum of energy storage and grid stability. How do we harness and store energy from such intermittent sources as the sun and the wind? According to some, the answer may lie in breakthroughs in battery technologies, advances in lithium-ion alternatives, perhaps the development of hydrogen storage systems, which promise to stabilize the grid, thus ensuring a reliable energy supply even during the fluctuations of nature, when such sources of renewable energy as sunlight and wind or water are not consistently available. This may be on account of variations in the availability of sunlight, for example, at night or when the sky is cloudy, changes in wind patterns through the day and across the seasons. And these are all challenges that engineers today are grappling with. We must also reimagine the infrastructural bare bones of our urban spaces through the prism of sustainability. Engineers must strive to construct buildings that are resilient to the rigors of climate change and do not cast a damning carbon footprint. The advent of such green building materials as self-healing concrete, carbon-absorbing bricks, is merely the beginning of sustainable building, sustainable urbanizing revolutions that are taking place. Again, if you're interested in civil engineering, that's something to think about. As many of you may already know, in 2023, a Belgian brick company, Van der Sanden, created CO2 negative facing bricks that necessitate fewer materials and absorb carbon dioxide rather than produce it. As for older constructions, which are wholly lacking in sustainable features, in order to ensure that they remain functional without damaging the environment in the long run, civil engineers will have to rise to the occasion and retrofit them with environmentally friendly materials and innovation. Exacerbating the challenges of interminable industrialization and urban expansion is the concerning fact that urban centers around the world, thanks to humankind's ever-expanding population, are mushrooming at an unprecedented rate. According to the UN, owing to both demographic shifts and overall population growth, about 2.5 billion people could be added to cities, to urban areas, by the middle of the century. So by 2050, 2 out of every 3 people are likely to be living in cities, other urban centers. India alone should have added by then, by 2050, a dizzying 416 million, 41.6 crore urban dwellers. In the face of these alarming projections, engineers like you will absolutely have to reimagine the very essence, the very blueprint of city life. For the cities of tomorrow will not only have to be smart, but resilient, capable of withstanding the threats of climate change, natural disasters, overpopulation, which are mushrooming as rapidly as the world's population is. Engineers involved in urban planning and civil engineering must be in the vanguard of constructing resilient infrastructure. This is no mean task, as they will have to construct infrastructure from traditional houses to lofty skyscrapers, flyovers to underground tunnels or underwater tunnels that can withstand earthquakes, floods, storms, without succumbing to the ecological vagaries of a world that is rapidly becoming more and more environmentally fragile. Potential solutions may entail green roofs that absorb rainwater, for example, reducing the urban island heat effect, whereby the urban area is significantly warmer than the surrounding rural areas. Permeable pavements, perhaps, that mitigate flooding by allowing rainwater to collect in an underlying reservoir, from where the water ultimately seeps into the soil or is removed through subsurface drainage. Every aspect of urban design will have to be reconsidered and with sustainability and resilience in mind, tailored to the frightening whims of an overpopulous and over-urbanized world facing the vagaries of nature. But it's not just physical resilience that engineers must make your priority. For equally important, systemic resilience, embracing evolving technologies. The advent of smart cities, for example, appears as a beacon of hope. Deploying sensors, artificial intelligence, big data, smart cities can optimize everything from energy consumption to traffic flow, making urban life far more efficient and adept at countering disruptions. The foremost challenge lies in smoothly embedding these technologies in existing infrastructure without creating unnecessary economic and social problems. And there again, creativity, innovation, smarts are required. I used to chair, in between 2 stints in the External Affairs Committee of Parliament as chairman, I used to chair the IT Committee of the Parliament. And I must mention, of course, something that worried many of us there was cybersecurity. Securing our virtual ramparts, as it were, behind which significant portions of our lives are led. Even nearly 3.5 years after the COVID pandemic, We are even more married to our telephones and mobiles than ever before. As our world marches on and on towards wholesale digitization, the critical infrastructure that sustains modern civilization, our power grids, transportation networks, national security and governmental frameworks, healthcare systems, communication platforms, have all come under the mortally perilous threat of cyber attacks. Engineers have no option but to proceed with the assumption that every system you devise, every code you write, every software you build is vulnerable to cyber attacks and can be a target for hackers, both state-sponsored and rogue, such as terrorist groups. So on the battlefield of cybersecurity, engineers must lead from the front. Lay people have to entrust you not only with safeguarding their digital infrastructure, but anticipating the threats that may emerge from the inexorable advancements of artificial intelligence and quantum computing. In my view, the solution has to be to adopt a multifaceted approach. Cybersecurity demands the finest minds. I'm sure some of you present in this room will want to go into that field. As the sentinels who guard our electronic data, you must deploy a host of measures, from implementing state-of-the-art encryption bulwarks to designing redundant systems that can withstand breaches, perhaps by duplicating systems designed to take over if the primary system fails, and thus serving as a fail-safe in the event of a cyber attack. You will also have to work in concord with governmental and private sectors, forging the path ahead, the path to a digital secure world through consensus, collaboration, and shared knowledge. Not only this, you have to develop systems and security measures that can adapt to the dynamic nature of cyber threats, using artificial intelligence perhaps to anticipate threats, nip them in the bud before they manifest. Ultimately, we must understand that the crucial challenge lies not in the technology itself, but in cultivating a culture of smart thinking, of cybersecurity awareness. Any secure system is only as strong as its weakest link, and more often than not, that link is the human link. That is to say, engineers must, in partnership with lawmakers and policymakers, devise both the tools of defense and the educational frameworks that will ensure that we as a world understand and embrace the importance of cyber hygiene. Now, in recent years, of course, India has nurtured a culture of innovation and enterprise, much more than before. A young population like you that increasingly aspires to start businesses, solve problems, find innovative alternatives. But with the rolling tides of time, our engineers must also embrace the entrepreneurial tide blazing across the country. No sooner had entrepreneurship taken off in our country in the early 2000s than it began scripting a glorious transformative saga for India's economy. In the years since, this momentum has been fueled by the growth of our economy. A vast reservoir of talent stemming from all parts of India has contributed. The advent of incubators, a generous inflow of venture capital, not enough one might say, but both domestic and foreign are coming in. India has now emerged in recent years as the second largest destination for venture capital and growth funding in the Asia-Pacific, especially in areas like consumer tech, fintech, and software as a service. Then, of course, we've got the boundless global appeal of entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and all these, Jeff Bezos, Sam Altman for the younger generation. They have a place in popular culture that must be inspiring some of you as well. They have cults of personality around them, and that, I think, has already spawned in India a whole series of podcasts, entrepreneurial and fintech influencers on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, and such reality television as the enormously popular Shark Tank India, all of which is forging an aspirational culture dedicated to nourishing and encouraging and strengthening startups. In fact, I think on the Shark Tank India platform, various engineers like Anmol Saxena and Ashima Batra have already showcased Indian entrepreneurial spirit. And as a result, startups have suffused our economy. They're becoming ubiquitous, rapidly emerging as a global epicenter of entrepreneurship. India now boasts of the world's third largest startup ecosystem. We have over 159,000 startups, more than 160 unicorns, dominating such sectors as fintech, e-commerce, and healthcare, and cumulatively valued at more than $500 billion. We're only just behind the US and China, which is not bad. From Zoho to Zomato, from Card Dekho to Cred, legions of Indian unicorns have risen to tower over our economy, making benchmarks in innovation and even prompting global players in the Indian market to shudder for fear of being eclipsed. When the angel investor Eileen Lee first coined the term unicorn to refer to startups valued at over $1 billion, she meant to refer to something mythical, something rare. But India is proving her wrong, because far from being rare or mythical, our unicorns are preponderant, multiplying by leaps and bounds every year. In fact, in the realm of fintech alone, India has built 26 unicorns, including one decacorn, $10 billion, together valued at over $90 billion. So Indians today, both at home and abroad, and we have some on the stage who are from abroad, some are still working at home, whether it's CEOs in Silicon Valley or entrepreneurs in Bengaluru, they're all at the forefront of propelling innovation and sparking off disruption, vindicating the American inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil's dictum that the world in the 21st century will not experience 100 years of progress, but because of the dizzying rate of technological advancement, it will actually experience 20,000 years of progress in the next 100 years. No wonder then that an impassioned India has plunged headlong into things like generative artificial intelligence. Stanford University has a 2024 AI Index report identifying India with over 300 AI startups as one of the countries with the most AI startups in the world. And in fact, I was saying to our seniors here at the PSG institutions that AI must be amongst the new focuses of this illustrious College of Technology. There's a report published by the Boston Consulting Group saying that India leads the world in ChatGPT usage, having surpassed even the United States, which is where the whole generative AI revolution began. Unfortunately, some of the students are using ChatGPT for less respectable purposes, but we'll gloss over that for now. Nonetheless, the fact is there is a great deal coming out in the AI domain, and though it's a cliche now to say that the I in AI has come to stand for India, and I was told at PSG that the A stands for your alumni, so we have got A and I together right there. I'm hoping that we will come up with something truly Indian. For example, with our linguistic diversity, we can build some of the first multilingual large language models. Indian startups are shining the AI spotlight on our 22 official languages, enabling Indians nationwide to reap the benefits of modern technology in their own mother tongues. Moreover, a joint report by NASSCOM and BCG predicts that our AI market will touch a staggering $17 billion within 2 years. With all our major urban centers like Bengaluru being at the forefront of the startup scene, the years to come will witness a surge catalyzed hopefully by improved infrastructure and increased digital connectivity of entrepreneurial zeal in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities like Coimbatore and my own Thiruvananthapuram. Not only have we been starting innovative startups ourselves, Jaipur, a Tier 2 city, already boasts of the unicorn Card Dekho, the first produced in a Tier 2 city. My own constituency boasts the annual Huddle Global, India's largest beach startup festival, which is attracting entrepreneurs and innovators from across the world. And in fact, NASSCOM says the Indian startup landscape is slated to create more than 1.25 million direct employment opportunities by the end of this year alone. So this entrepreneurial energy is part of economic well-being, but we have to encourage it through access to credit markets, skills training, and mentorship, so that we can strengthen financial independence and job creation and maintain financial and occupational wellness on the way. And as I said, even though you're all studying engineering, and very often the old idea was that it'll lead to a secure job, you must develop the spirit of enterprise. That's the way of the future. That's already the way today. And as I said, Our enterprises are already so successful that they have generated over 1.6, our startups have generated over 1.6 million jobs, that's 16 lakh jobs, directly, signaling that youth-led enterprise is already becoming a cornerstone of our economy. So, fostering innovation, risk-taking, and new ventures is a crucial new pillar to our own well-being in this country. I've always believed that Indians are innovators par excellence. The urge to innovate is ingrained in us from our early days. Innovation and disruption have both been in our culture throughout. And I must say, we have had a talent for what Schumpeter used to call creative destruction. We were, in many ways, a country that was ahead of the whole world in the realms of science, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. Ours is the land of Ayurveda, that famous medicinal system of our ancient India, with its herbs, oils, massages, and other therapies. And now we're spreading it around the world. Even Switzerland has recently recognized Ayurveda as a science. Ours is the land where the zero was invented. Sometimes people fear that that's all we're inventing is zero. We can do more than that. The decimal system has been made a reality here. Over 2,000 years ago, Shushruta conducted the world's first known plastic surgery operation, a rhinoplasty, a nose job, and the actual procedures have been recorded and found. The instruments have been dug up by archaeologists. Here, too, were heard long before Copernicus in the West, the first few rumblings of heliocentrism, that the Earth goes around the sun and not the other way around. And this is something that ancient Indian astronomers realized centuries before Galileo. The impulse to innovate has thus been a defining characteristic of the Indian mind and civilization from time immemorial. Of course, engineers are never wrong. They just find alternative solutions, right? So that's something that we must embrace as it's part of our Indian temperament. We like to find innovative solutions to everyday problems. And that's why in North India they have this term called jugaad, which is in some ways a band-aid solution. But it's more than that. It's also not just a quick shortcut to solve a problem. It is the innovatory impulse to beat the tendency just to make do, but to find innovative and ingenious ways of unconventional and creative answers to the conventional challenges people face. And so you often find non-traditional solutions to traditional problems. I've come across the story of a villager who constructed a makeshift vehicle to transport livestock and goods by rigging a wooden cart with an irrigation hand pump repurposed as an engine, or a commonplace machine or household objects refashioned in ways that their manufacturers would never have imagined. In Punjab, for instance, at the heat of the summer, locally manufactured washing machines doubled as churners to make lassi, the buttermilk, the more, the sambaram. Here we have cooling technologies coming out of a washing machine. Why not? Shops were very often too tiny to accommodate a full washing machine. So some innovators decided to repurpose a table fan, attach blades to create portable blenders. So you don't have room for a washing machine, you can convert a table fan into a mixer. Everything in India is reusable and imaginable. You just need an Indian engineer by your side, right? Instead of complicating or embellishing our products, we can strip them down to their bare bones. Reinventing the wheel to lethal effect, we can make them affordable, durable, and useful. I know the Tata Nano was a marketing disaster and it's being discontinued. But as an innovation, it was a phenomenal product. And I talked about it for years because of the fact that it stripped down so many things people used to consider essential in cars and created a car that worked and was incredibly inexpensive and affordable. So we know how to think outside the box. We know how to come up with creative ways to work within limited resources. And that's why I think we are ranked today in the Global Innovation Index 2024 as 39th amongst the 133 economies they rank worldwide. You all know the story, I'm sure, of the engineer who's summoned to an urgent problem because a very expensive and complicated imported machine had suddenly stopped working, and this company needed someone locally who could fix it. So they called this engineer. She taps it here, she taps it there, she looks down, she looks sideways, she looks behind the machine, and then, like a magician about to perform her most legendary trick, she fiddles around with some switches and buttons and pushes something, and voila, with a loud click and bells and whistles, the machine starts working. So how much do we owe you, says the Indian multinational representative with his imported machine. And she says, oh, 25 lakh rupees. And this fellow's face dropped at 25 lakh rupees for 5 minutes work. So she says, yes, the solution itself is only 5 minutes. But the fee is for the 25 years I have spent to acquire the knowledge to know which button to push on this machine. So sometimes, it's not about the fix. It's about knowing what the problem is, the ability to diagnose it and find a solution. And that's something that's really important. That's the cutting edge. Knowing which button to push is sometimes what you learn here and find out in the course of working and applying what you've learned. So I do want to say that it's extremely important that you be prepared to fix the real ground problems facing our people everywhere. And it's to confront in the process the possibility of failure. No visionary in any field has ever walked this earth without experiencing either failure or what it feels like to have the odds stacked against you. Yet if we today hail somebody as a visionary, it's not because they attained an unblemished track record of success. It's because despite repeatedly failing, they get back up on their feet, they dust themselves off and soldier on, not halting to rest until they've scaled the summit of their dreams. And I will say this to the young people here, that one thing that's on India's favor is that age is on our side. After all, more than half our population is under 30. Not only are we the world's most populous nation, we are amongst the world's youngest. And 14.2% of Indians between the ages of 18 and 34 are already engaged in some kind of entrepreneurial activity or another. Nearly 50% of India's youth was deemed employable in 2023, and yet we have soaring unemployment. So what do? If people aren't giving you jobs, go out and create your own. Unemployment has actually sharpened India's entrepreneurial spirit. It's motivated young people to envisage disruptive startups in the middle of the job crunch. Be job creators and not job seekers. Nothing wrong with that. Given the majority of preeminent Indian startups were launched by young and dynamic Indians, we've got to channel our ambitious, innovative, and hardworking youth's drive into conducive avenues, empowering them to transition from, as I said, seeking jobs to creating them, ensuring your creativity, your brilliance is not snuffed out by the dearth of opportunities in the job market. Yes, ideally, we'd like to have a good, open job market for you, and that's why so many are going abroad, but that's not really the answer. If you're joining a dynamic, competitive, productive, youthful workforce, then you can be the powerhouse of the world sitting right here in India, as long as you take the risk, take the reins in your hands. And I must say that we have learned some hard lessons in recent years about over-reliance on international supply chains. Whether it's COVID pandemic, which exposed the vulnerabilities of the global supply chain, whether it's geopolitical tensions like the Russia-Ukrainian war, which have worsened our woes in terms of international availabilities, whether it's Mr. Trump and his tariffs, which have savagely cut export markets for some of our goods. The fact is, supply chains need to be, from our point of view, not just efficient, but also as immune as possible to global cataclysms, external pressures, whether it's wars, whether it's a president with his own ideas, whatever it may be. And this is vital in manufacturing, where repeated delays in the supply of critical ingredients and materials. China, for example, withheld rare earths and materials and magnets and boring machines and various other essential elements and paralyzed many of our manufacturing firms for several months in recent times. All of this can bring an entire industry to its knees, and that's why we need to find our own solutions at home. You must expedite the deployment of such cutting-edge technologies as predictive analytics, machine learning, anticipate and mitigate disruptions, go on for better supply chain risk management, localize production and improve it. There are advancements now in 3D printing and automation, which we can also take on. Reduce our dependence on international supply chains by lowering shipping costs and carbon emissions. Eliminating delays, because now we have things at home. Safeguard our local industries from geopolitical and environmental catastrophes. So all of these things that I outlined are merely a few of the major challenges that the world faces today and that perhaps only you engineers can help us surmount. An expectant humankind looks to you, my dear engineering students, that you will firmly deliver our world from the difficulties that bedevil it. To be a questing Indian is also to quest for a better, brighter future, whose hallmarks will be the peace, prosperity, and progress we all seek, that will sustain development, that will be ecologically friendly, and at the same time, that will be fueled by your effort, your sweat and tears. I don't doubt that all of you, as members of the thriving Indian engineering fraternity, will deploy your boundless creativity and prowess in propelling our world to that new age we all eagerly anticipate, one in which I was wondering what advice to leave the students here with, and I decided I couldn't do better than Steve Jobs. When he gave a commencement address at Stanford in 2005, 20 years ago, about 20 years ago at this time,